G'day, mate. What's your name?
Dave ONeil.
Dave. What do you do, Dave?
Just a comedian. Humble comedian. That's it.
Hello, welcome back to another episode of Crowdworkcast. My name's Andrew Barnett. Thanks so much for joining me. Now, today's episode is the first of a bunch of episodes, 5 in total, that I recorded down in Melbourne during the Melbourne International Comedy Festival. So you're going to notice that if you're watching them on YouTube, it's a bit of a different background, different setup, but all great episodes, so I'm really looking forward to bringing them all to you. Appropriately, the first one of these is Dave ONeil. Now, Dave is the first bloke who ever gave me gigs when I went to Melbourne. He helped set up a bunch of gigs when I was down there on a trip, and he's an absolute champion. He's always been really good to me, so it was really good to get Dave in and have him be the first one of these. Now, you're going to hear plenty of good stories from Dave. He's done everything, stand-up, radio, film, everything. And TV, obviously. If you'd like to follow Dave, it's Dave ONeil on Twitter and Instagram. He also has 2 podcasts. Now, he's got a podcast called The Junkies, which he does with Kitty Flanagan. That is junk food related. So in his words, if you don't like junk food, don't bother listening. But he's also got a podcast called Somehow Related, which he does with Glenn Robbins, where they get two things, and they over the course of the story, over the course of the podcast, they explain how those 2 things are related. And obviously with Dave and Glenn, it's always very funny and a lot of fun. So give those podcasts a listen. If you'd like to see Dave live, obviously follow him on Twitter and Instagram. You can see all those details there. And if you'd like to see me live, obviously May 6th, this is getting much, much closer. May 6th, Brisbane. I will be at the Brisbane Comedy Festival at the Underground Theatre. Please pick up tickets for that. I have no idea how it's selling. So hopefully there's going to be plenty of people there, but we will see. Brisbane. And of course, Sydney Comedy Festival, May 20th and 21st. I will be at the Enmore Comedy Club in Enmore. Those tickets, I believe, are selling pretty well. So if you'd like to come along to that, get tickets sooner rather than later, and hopefully we'll squeeze you in. Other than that, give me a follow on Instagram, which is Andrew Barnett Comedy, and enjoy this episode. This is me with Dave ONeil. A humble comedian.
That's all I do.
Mate, there's you got no need to be humble. You've had quite a career.
Yeah. You're right. No, you're right. I should remember that. I often forget, because it's like when you do gigs, brings you back down to earth.
Yeah.
You feel like an open micer some nights. So you're like, oh yeah, no, I got to remember who I am. But no, it's
right.
Yeah, you got to,
I had a bit of that last night I was doing silent comedy down at the Arbory.
Oh yeah.
And just starting out, like right at the start of the show. I'm getting them in, and then a freight train came past, and basically it's 3 minutes of a freight train and me trying to keep their attention. And
it was a cold night, wasn't it? Sort of a bit rainy.
Yeah. Rainy.
Does that affect? Because that's sort of outdoors, isn't it?
It is outdoors. It's not too bad though, because it's the audience were all undercover, and it started off with a bit rainy, and then when the first act was on, it just got steadier and steadier and steadier. But they were all under cover, but the edge of the stage where I had to walk down and everything was all getting soaked. So I was like just waiting for the last bit of the closer, because to run down to the stage you're in the rain the whole time.
Oh jeez.
So it was good. It's good. I really like it. Works really well, that silent comedy.
I've never done it. Yeah.
Oh mate, no. You'd enjoy it. You get to mess around a fair bit.
I don't like wearing headphones though, I've got to say.
You don't?
No.
But you've done how much radio have you done over the years?
10 years of breakfast radio. But yeah, maybe that's why I don't like wearing headphones. I don't know. Yeah, it's weird.
That's
I don't wear hats either. I don't like hats.
Well, mate, look at that head of hair.
Yeah, exactly. Why would you wear a hat when you got hair like this?
Yeah, I know. Hats are for bald men, mate.
It's true. Who does that? Mike Goldstein does that joke. It's the international symbol of baldness, is your hat. But if I was bald, I'd wear a hat, probably. I've got bald brothers. They wear hats, so fair enough.
Yeah. So you've got bald brothers and you've got that head of hair.
Yeah. I've got a twin brother who's got the similar hair, but my 2 older brothers are definitely receding and thinning. Oh, yeah, bald. Yeah, you're getting bald, which is because my dad had a good head of hair. And I checked his hairline on the deathbed when he died. So, because there's always been a big argument in the family amongst the women, I've only got brothers, so it's all the wives, say that Kev, my dad, was combing over, massive comb over.
Really?
I'm like, no, I don't think it is a comb over. Because he took great pride in his hair. And then when he died, me and my brother were in the room with him, and he's, my brother said, I'm going to hug him one more time. He goes, do you want to do anything? Yeah, I'm going to check his hairline. I'll check his hairline. And it was all there, right to the front. It wasn't that even receding. So anyway.
That's, wow.
Yeah, I know, that's a powerful move. But, you couldn't really ask him when he was alive, because it was kind of...
Yeah, well,
how do you bring it up?
Mate, if he was combing... then
that's awkward.
There's a reason he's doing it. He doesn't want to give away that he's...
He was a war veteran. He served this country, and, you can't ask a veteran, well, are you actually bald, Dad? Or what's going on under there? He probably wouldn't have minded, actually.
Which war did he serve in?
Vietnam.
Oh, man, that's...
how funny is this? Last night in the audience, there was a guy with a short hair and a moustache, and I go, you look like a cop or a soldier. And he goes, oh, I'm a soldier. He's a young guy, Hamish, and I said, oh, yeah, my dad was in Vietnam, blah, blah. I've got all jokes about Vietnam. He went last year on a Kentucky tour and all this stuff. And I said, so you never saw action? He goes, no, I was in Iraq. I'm like, Jesus Christ, he was in Iraq, this guy.
Howly.
I know, and I was wearing like a Hawaiian shirt. And I said, you're not getting flashbacks. You don't think I'm a watermelon seller in the market with a secret bomb, do you?
It is funny. Now, I remember years ago I had to do something, and I was out at... we went out to Holsworthy Barracks.
Yeah, I've done a gig there.
And just meeting and you just look around and go, oh, geez, these guys are kids. They're so young.
Yeah, I did the, we went out there. That's sort of in the outer western suburbs of Sydney, kind of. Yeah, yeah. So I got the train out there. I remember it. And this guy was the colonel kept hanging shit on me. And so he said, it was like being back at school. He's like, oh, I like your haircut. I'm like, what? He goes, oh, your little fringe and all that. And I'm like, what? And then he's like, I said, my dad was in the military for 30 years. Oh, yeah. What did he do? I said, he was in the Air Force. He goes, oh, don't fucking mention that, mate. There's civilians in uniforms, So he really annoyed me, this guy. So I just hung shit on him. I said, oh, the colonel's here. He's having a break from KFC, everyone. Because obviously all the soldiers didn't like him anyway.
Yeah.
But I said to the crowd, I said, my dad was in the military. He was a warrant officer. He was in Vietnam 30 years. And they all started clapping. And I said, in the Air Force. And I gave them the finger. They're like, boo.
It's funny, yeah, because you don't realise there's those rivalries amongst the
Air Force, the Navy, and the Army.
Yeah. But what I don't get, though, is like they all go, oh, the Air Force, that's easy.
Civilians in uniforms, yeah.
But you had the option. If you were smarter, join the Air Force.
Yeah, I'd join the Air Force.
Well, it's not hard. Yeah, well, why would you do the harder one?
I reckon the Navy. I've got a nephew in the Navy, and I reckon, he's he did a trade, an electrician, and he loves it. But yeah, I don't know, the Navy. Oof, I don't know. Just being stuck on a boat.
Yeah.
Then again, I've never done cruise ships, so who knows? Maybe if
You've never done cruise ships. Wow.
I got asked to do them, but it was never enough money. So I got asked to do the ones where the guy goes, oh, yeah, you're going for 5 days. It's like you got to do 4 shows, one for kids. One. I'm just like, Jesus.
Mate.
I'm thinking, have you done them?
I've done those.
And I'm thinking, oh, this must be good coin. And then he says the money. I'm like, what? I said, I actually said to him, I earn more money on the land. He's like, oh, okay, fair enough. So you've done those ones where you've got to do kids?
Yeah, before I started at Fox, I did a few of them. I did like one summer where it was sort of between, I started working at Fox, but then we didn't have the cricket show at that stage and I wasn't on contract, so I'd have the summers off from that. And so I just was like, okay, well, I'll go do these for a bit. You learn a lot about yourself as a comedian.
Oh, yeah.
You got to have those five separate half hours.
Yeah, that's a lot of material.
And those, well, man, the thing is too, they go, oh, it's got to be family friendly. But what they don't really play up is it's like you've got, in that family friendly show, you've got 4-year-olds and stuff at the front. And then you've got their parents and grandparents, and everyone thinks that the show's for them. So, like, kids are the worst. Like,
oh no, kids are terrible.
They'll just get up. They'll go, "This is boring,"
and
just
walk
get
around
up and walk around.
Yeah.
And then so you got to. My trick was I'd try and say poo and wee enough to keep the kids sort of interested.
Yeah.
While you're telling jokes they don't understand to their parents and grandparents.
Yeah. No thanks. Yeah.
It was my other one I used to do was I used to always ask
questions.
Ask the kids how many swear words they knew.
Oh, that's a good one.
And then I'd make up. I'd be like, "Do you know the M word?" They're like, oh, what's that? I said, mate, that's the worst of all of them. Like, if you ask your parents after this, they'll pretend it doesn't even exist.
See, but who needs that stress though? Like of doing that kind of work. It's like, it's you know, if cruise ships were around when I started 33 years ago, I would have done them. But I always say there'll always be time to do cruise ships. You know what I mean? I can do them when I'm a bit older. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, exactly.
One of my sons, who's 19, was Dad, you know cruise ship? He's thinking they sound great. You know what I mean? Oh yeah, I'll come with you when you do one.
Mate, okay. I remember doing one.
Be good if you were young. It'd be great.
Yeah,
You're 25. Be awesome.
Well,
then again, you might get on a pension or one. One of my friends did one and said they were so old, the people. He said to the guy organising, maybe next time just get another nurse. Don't get a comedian. But I know there's all different ones.
Yeah, there's all different lines. But the thing is, I remember going and doing one where it must have been one of the lines where Carnival, you generally do those 5 shows, but it's a little comedy club, so the late night shows are all right.
Yeah.
But then the other ones, there's ones where you might do 2 shows, but they're on the same night in the theatre. So you'd be in like a 700 to 900 seat theatre, and then you do an early and late show, but they've got to be generally clean. It's about 45, pretty clean. But I remember on those, you're on your own. I remember doing one where I was on I must have been on like 6 or 7 nights, and I performed on one of the nights, and that day, the first conversation I'd had with anyone was when I walked on stage. Like it just, and then you get home, and I'd be at the kids' T-ball on the weekend, and all the other parents are like, mate, your life is so good.
Yeah.
And you're like, oh, it's not quite what it's cracked up to be.
Yeah. So you're saying it's solitary. It's solitude. Yeah.
Mate, I ended up hanging out with a Buddy Holly impersonator from the Gold Coast.
Yeah.
For the last 2 days. That's what it got to.
Yeah, don't get on a light playing with him. Yeah, I know. And also, what if you have a bad one? Nick Capper, a great comic, he went on one and did a gig and went badly. It said people like doing that fake laughing, like young guys going, you know. So he said you had to hide in the cabin for 2 days.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because every time you go out there, people are like heckling you.
It's not even great if it goes super well, because then people will come up and want to chat to you which is fine. I don't mind a quick chat, but I had people like, hey man, come have lunch with us.
Yeah,
I got some work to do. They're like, what work? We're at sea. I'm good call.
Yeah.
There's no internet. I can't do anything.
Yeah. Oh,
so,
God.
So how did you start in comedy? Because you're obviously a stand-up. That's how I met you, through stand-up.
Yes, we met in Wollongong.
We did. You actually, I was saying this to someone.
Stewie running Wollongong.
Yeah.
Stewie? Yeah, Stewie.
Down in the basement of the
great
builders.
room.
That was great fun.
The work and the Builders Club.
Yeah.
It's like an RSL. Yeah.
It was always a fun gig though.
That's great.
But you gave me my first gigs in Melbourne.
Oh yeah.
remember.
Oh yeah. Right. I would have thought. Yeah. Right. Oh, you did my room. Did you do my?
Yeah,
room?
I did your room down at Fairfield.
Yeah.
And
my
I
room. It's just a room in a pub.
Mate,
people do think I own that pub.
Do they?
Yeah. I know.
You're the king of it.
It'd be worth millions of dollars, but I don't own it. No.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Mate, because I think I did phone hacks yesterday.
Oh, yeah. Well, that's Nick Capper.
Yeah, Capper.
And Goldstein, the 2 comics we've mentioned. Anyway, bizarre.
Well, those two have. I was telling them about my first gig, and it's like the ultimate, like one of those, because God bless you, put me on. I was doing 20, but then I think Limo was headlining, but he had to do Utopia and Breakfast Radio the next day. So he did the first half, and then Glenn Robbins was the special guest, and Glenn didn't want to go last.
That's right, you had to follow him.
I had to follow Glenn. So it was literally 3 blokes from the TV and some prick from Sydney they'd never heard of.
But you did well.
Like, it was funny. But I just remember because after Glenn got off, like I saw ladies grabbing their purse thinking, oh, well, that's the show.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. And then, wait, you got 20 more minutes of this bloke from Sydney.
Yeah. Well, that's Oh, no, that's funny. Yeah. Yeah, some of these guys, they don't want to go on last. They just don't want to go on last, which is fair enough. But.
That was funny because Glenn, I remember talking to him, and he seemed genuinely like. I remember him saying to me, he goes, "Mate, I shouldn't do this.
He's anxious, yeah.
I don't do enough stand up. I respect the art." And so I'm like, "Oh man, maybe he's," and then just went out and crushed.
Yeah, that's the thing about Glenn. He doesn't do stand up anymore, but he when he used to do it, he used to absolutely smash it. Then he come and goes, "Yeah, I'm not really a stand up. You guys, you're more real stand ups." I'm like, You did the best on the night, mate.
Yeah,
what are you
what
talking about?
What do you think a real stand-up is, Glenn? It's the guy that gets the laughs.
Yeah,
Who cares how it's done?
Exactly.
So how did you start in stand-up?
Oh no, I did teaching. I didn't want to teach. I just thought I did primary teaching. I was very young and immature. I was 20 when I finished teaching. Finished the course, and everyone's filling out these forms, going, "I'm going to go to." But back in those days, in the 80s, that was 1985 when I finished. Pretty old. Depending on your marks is where you got sent. So, but going by my marks, I would have been sent to, say, Moree or beyond, near the Queensland border somewhere.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I would have been sent to the outback because I was a pretty shit student.
Which is what you need for those, the towns that are struggling. Let's send them the worst teachers.
Yeah. And the youngest immature, virgin from Melbourne who's very sheltered. And so I just went, no, I'm not going to teach. So I went to I did a year of arts at Melbourne Uni, and then I got a job in the Red Cross as sort of like a public education, a field officer we were called. We'd go and give talks, and I really like that. We're driving around in a station wagon, giving talks to people at the Red Cross and stuff.
Really?
And working with the volunteers, and I really enjoyed that. And then because I'd been a Red Cross volunteer through Scouts, actually, in the Scouts, big in the Scouts. And then anyway, I got a job at a private PR company doing public relations, and I started my public relations degree, which is another arts degree, and then I got sacked when I was 23, maybe. Because the company wasn't going great. And again, I wasn't a great public relations person. Again, I was very immature. I'd make jokes in meetings. Like we had like all these different clients, like BHP, the taxi industry was the taxi industry.
Wow. Remember when they existed?
Yeah, exactly. Well, that's the thing there. And they're all small, like black cabs, Western cabs, and they all fought amongst each other, but they'd all meet in this room above a cafe in North Melbourne, and then we turn up to tell them how to do their public relations. So the guy goes, "Have you got any suggestions to improve our image?" And I said, as a joke, "Have you tried deodorant?" And then
which would have worked, to be honest.
And then I got sacked. So then I just thought, I was in bands and stuff. I was always in bands because when you grow up in the suburbs, outer suburbs of Melbourne or wherever you are in the world, probably, if you can't play sport to attract women, you join a band. You know what I mean? So my brothers were in bands and stuff, and so we formed a band. And so I was used to being on stage. I liked it. And then, girls at uni, my boss, when he sacked me, he said I should do stand-up.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and then these girls at uni, because by that stage I was doing my PR degree, these girls at uni said, "Oh, you should do stand-up. You're really funny." And when you're 23 and girls say stuff like that, you're like, okay, I'm going to go and do it.
Girls know everything.
They know everything. Yeah. That's right. And so I went and did it. And then, but I did my first gig at the La Joke, which used to be part of Last Laugh, which was a legendary Melbourne comedy establishment.
Was that at the Athenaeum?
No, they moved it. It used to be it's on Smith Street in Collingwood. But yeah, it moved to the Athenaeum. And you got to, and I just thought I'd just get paid work straight away. Because I didn't know how you don't know how anything works. So I turned up. I did well on my first gig, and I said to the guy, "So when am I on like downstairs in the big room?" He's like, "Nah, mate, that's not how it works." So it's a classic thing. You do you meet other comics, and that's how there's other amateur nights. But there wasn't this big open mic scene that there is now. It was just like they'd have occasionally have amateur nights, like a Tuesday or Thursday night in established venues. So like the Last Laugh, the Comedy Cafe had these amateur nights where you could go along and sign up and get on. But there weren't that many comics back then, so it was easy to get on.
I was trying to explain that to a couple of open micers in Sydney recently about even when I started, which is 14 years ago, there wasn't this open mic scene.
No.
Like there was rooms where they'd put one.
Yes, open mic on. Yeah. That's how it used to work. That's how it used to work in the 90s too. So you go along to, say, the Star and Garter, which Jamone and Bob started, Bob Franklin, and they would have like a proper headliner. Like back in those days, it would be Judith Lucy or Tim Smith or Richard Stubbs or one of those guys, and then they'd have a proper MC. They'd have two middle bracket acts doing 10 minutes. So guys that have been around for 5 to 10 years, and then they'd have two open micers in the start.
Yeah,
and that was good, and that's how you learned because there was no internet, and so you'd hang around and you'd watch, the fellow open micers, then you'd watch the middle bracket, and then you'd watch the headliner.
There was nothing better than that feeling too, when that humbling feeling of you do the open mic spot and you go, whoa, that couldn't have gone any better.
Yes.
And then you just watch it slowly get, and it's like, oh, wow, that could have gone heaps better.
Yeah. And then the headliner comes on. It's like, oh my God, this guy's just making up shit. What's going on? It's like, yeah, exactly. And so that's how I started. And but then I really wanted to be a comedy writer on TV shows because back then there were a lot of like Full Frontal. There was Hey Hey, Comedy Company. Fast Forward was still around when I started. And so I wanted to be a comedy writer, and so that's how I got work on those shows as a writer. I got paid first as a writer than before I was a comedian, really. So, but that's why I got into comedy. I thought I wanted to be a comedy writer. That's what I want, you know.
You still write, Matt? You still write on a bunch of stuff?
Yeah, no, not as much anymore. But last show I would have written on was Hughes, we have a problem. So, I mean, that's a good thing about when one of your mates gets their own show. They tend to employ their mates. So,
well, they employ the mates they know they
turn
enjoy
up.
working
Yeah,
with,
yeah,
and
yeah,
that are going to do a good job. It's funny that that thing. I think there's, like you said, that'll turn up. That people...
Oh man, we employed. So when I eventually became the head writer on Full Frontal, me and a guy called Marco Toole, who's still working as a writer. So he was a stand-up too, but he doesn't do stand-up anymore, and he went right into the comedy writing world. Now he's a comedy producer, and he did all black comedy and all of John Safran shows and stuff. Anyway, so he's done very well, but I of course moved more into stand-up. But it's I interviewed Lionel Richie once, and because that was my aim. I wanted to be the head writer on Fast Forward or Full Frontal. Then I got there, and as Lionel Richie said to me once when I interviewed on radio, when you get to the top, there's nothing there. That's what he said.
Wow.
When you get to the top. And so when you become a head writer on those shows, it's just a pain in the ass because you're middle management.
Yeah.
Because you've got the director who's got power over you, the producer's got power over you, then you've got the cast who's you're sort of on a similar stepping, but unless they're really famous. So, you know what I mean? If you're working with, like, back in those days, it'd be Eric Banner or McAuliffe. They got more power than you. And then there's all the writers who hate you because you're not putting their scripts on air.
Yeah.
So you're just the middle management. You're just like going, So yeah. I can't remember the point I'm making, but anyway, I did a lot of that writing, and then but then eventually as you get a bit older, you get too sick of putting up with other people's opinions and stuff. You just want to do your own thing.
Yeah.
You know?
That's I think the thing that appeals the most is that idea of that freedom to do. Like I often think, like, I just want to get to the point where I have enough money in the bank or my debt low enough that I can do the things that are interesting rather than the things, okay, I got to do the money job, I got to do the...
Have to do corporate gigs, etc., which I do a lot of. But yeah, that's right. And so we employed a lot of comics as writers, and some were great. Like I remember Peter Haller, before he was famous, we employed him. He was good. He would turn up. He had good ideas. He'd be there at 10 o'clock. See, you don't have to be there at 9.
Yeah, 10
Get there at 10 to 3, 10 to 3, 10 to 4. That's all you got to work.
Yeah.
Hughesy used to work for us as a writer. He was good. But some of these other guys, I won't mention any names, but fucking hell. They would sign a contract to write for 2 days, 3 days a week. They wouldn't turn up. Oh, what are you doing? You'd ring them up. Like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm at home. Just, It's like, Anyway.
It's funny you mentioned that because that's how I sort of got my start at Fox. Was I was doing audience warm up.
Oh yeah.
Started just
I've done that,
throwing jokes, like pitching jokes, and then it was like, oh, do you want to come to the writers' meeting? I was doing that unpaid, and then all of a sudden it's like, because I just kept turning up.
It's true. It's so true.
And that's what you talk to Rochford now, who I work with. They go, how did you two get hooked up? And he goes, he was like a comedian who, if he said we're going to start working this time, he'd turn up. And he goes, it was the most reliable thing. Like, you turn up with ideas and...
you got to do the job, be able to do the job and not piss anyone off, and then you'll be right. Yeah, exactly. Because they'd rather employ someone who... There's always the geniuses, but the geniuses often don't want to turn up, are hard to work with. So people just go...
Yeah.
Because in Australia, it's a small industry, unlike London or New York. You can probably be an arsehole and do all right.
Yeah, you got to... If to be an arsehole, you've got to be really fucking good.
Yeah.
Whereas to be... If you're good enough and easy to work with, that's the career. That's where you get the career, I think.
Oh, I reckon. Absolutely.
Yeah. So you mentioned Eric Banner. You wrote... I think of you as the guy who gave him his start.
No. I worked on Full Frontal with him, and we used to write all the Poiter sketches together. Because we had similar backgrounds. I had a suburban. I mean, he was from the west, I was from the east, but we were similar kind of. We had things in common, you know. So, and he was a stand-up. It's always gone really well for Eric. So, I used to help write his stuff. Yeah. And then I was in the movie The Nugget with him, which I didn't have anything to do with. I didn't write that. That was written by the director. But yeah, his wife suggested me for the role, actually.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah. So
I remember seeing that. That was one of my favourite Australian comedies when I was.
God,
I must have
really?
been. What year would that have been?
2001, maybe.
Yeah, because
2002?
I would have been like 19, 20, like hitting that age.
Are you from the country? You're from the country?
Yep.
Yeah, country people love it.
Yeah.
So when I got, even like 5 years ago, I got on a small plane in Queensland. There's this farmer with a big hat sitting, and I sit next to him and goes, "Oh, can't believe the fat guy from the Nuggets sitting next to me on a plane."
love the backhandedness of the
Fat guy from the Nugget. Yeah, that's all right. But it was a long time ago, that movie. Absolutely.
Yeah, that was and then you were in there was another one because it was
Takeaway. I wrote that with Mark O'Toole. Yeah. Which Eric was originally going to be in, but then his career took off. So he did Chopper and then Black Hawk Down and all that, and it all took off for him.
That was a career, like in terms of going from Puerta to Hollywood leading man. That's something I wouldn't have necessarily like. Obviously, very talented guy, but it's almost
people. I remember we interviewed. God, it was Matt Damon. I think he goes, "Hey man, you're a comic." I went, "Yeah, this is on radio." Off air, and he's like, "Do you know Eric Byrne? Apparently, he was a stand-up comic." Like, yeah, he was really funny because I can't believe he was a comic.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, I can't believe he was a stand-up comedian, but he was. Yeah,
and he was good.
He was good. Yeah, I used to go on tour with him. I was like his support act in the '90s. So we did some real it was at the height of Poiter fame. So he would come on at the end as Poiter, and we would do he would get someone out of the crowd or something, and we did gigs like the Bribey Island RSL, and which for people that don't know, that's an island off Brisbane that. You know, in the last 20 years got a bridge, but before that there was no bridge to Bribey Island. And
that was the Brisbane people who weren't quite turned out enough to live in Brisbane.
Yes, and then there's other islands too. You know, Russell Island or one of those joints. Oh man, anyway, there's no bridges to them. But I remember doing a gig near there. They said just hang shit on Russell Island, just say, and the crowd went crazy. But anyway, yeah. So we did Bribey Island RSL, and this woman rang on and grabbed Eric on the crotch and wouldn't let go. So I literally said to the promoter, "Start the van," and he pulled it out the back, and I sort of pushed the woman, and Eric went, "Thank you, good night," and we ran out the back. And I remember there were people running after the van as we drove off.
Where is probably the weirdest place you've ever played?
Because you do turn up to some gigs, and they think, "Oh, this is going to be a great idea. We're going to do stand-up in a rodeo or something like that."
Yeah.
I did a rodeo once in Queensland, but it wasn't a functioning rodeo. It was like a dinner or something where you walk in and you go, what is this joint? It's like an outdoor stadium. Oh, it's a rodeo. But yeah, God, I've done a park in Kalgoorlie, you know, for miners. Well, they had the whole park to themselves, but you're still in a park.
Yeah.
I'm trying to think of any other weird ones I've done. Nah, I've done. Have I done a ship? I've done those cruise. I've done boats and stuff, but they're normally okay, you know.
Yeah. There's nothing like that.
Never done a plane. Hughesy's done a plane.
A plane?
Yeah, they did something on Virgin where they had comics on a plane, and you spoke on that mic where the hosties speak.
Oh, everyone do the obligatory 3 minutes of.
Yeah. Oh, I just do pilot material.
Yeah. Oh, that's Plane strikes me as weird.
I've done private homes and stuff like that, but they're normally okay. They're all right, you know.
I did a private home way too early it was a weird one for do you know Marty Bright?
Oh yeah,
Sydney comic. So early doors, he used to advertise on Gumtree.
Oh wow,
comics for parties, and he just had this one for some guy's 50th. And he couldn't do it, so he gets me and Dane Heiser, and we're about 3 or 4 years into comedy at this stage. He goes, "Just go up and do this." And drive up the Central Coast. We didn't have to be there till 10 p.m. at night because they were going to. Basically, the whole idea was this guy, he's for his 50th. They're all going to the local Chinese. Then everyone was catching a minibus back to his place to kick on, and we were the surprise. And there was no microphone, there was no light. It was just stand next to that esky.
How many people?
Probably 40 or 50.
Yeah, that's too many people though with no mic.
Oh, mate, it was. But they were taking me they were taking what I was saying as though it was earnest, too. Like, you know, I had that bit. I used to do the bit all the time about my son being my best friend.
Oh, yeah.
Saying, your dad, you're my best friend. I'm like, I couldn't say it back to you. Mate, one of the guys was like, why not? He doesn't. I'm like, oh, mate, these are just jokes.
Yeah, those gigs can be hard. Yeah.
Yeah, but I remember doing another one for a real rich guy in Strathfield in Sydney.
Oh, yeah.
Which is one of those sneaky rich areas.
Yeah, that's on Parramatta Road, isn't it? Strathfield?
Yeah.
Sort of?
Yeah, so out that way. But
Yeah.
if you go just sort of south of Parramatta Road, there's all these real old mansions from...
Oh, great.
Yeah. And so it's like, it's all old money.
Yeah.
And so we're in this guy's... But in we were a surprise. Nothing better than surprise comedy, I've got to say.
It's terrible. It's terrible.
Everyone thinks it's going to be a
I
good
did one
idea.
in the backyard for rich people in Hawthorn, which is a rich area of Melbourne. And I said for his wife, and normally I said to the guy, you've got to tell everyone that I'm on, because it's some of them will know me, but some of them won't, and some will think they know me from somewhere else. You know what I mean? Like, you're a bank or a bank worker. Like, oh, do you work in a bank? But anyway, that went well. So what happened in Strathfield?
So we were hidden in the front office. We were hidden in his office at the front of his house, and but he must have bought at a charity auction Mark Waugh's one-day helmet.
Oh, wow.
So I have a photo somewhere at home, because while we weren't looking, we were like,
put it on.
Fuck, yeah. So I got a photo of me where it's a surprisingly small head.
Yeah, right.
Mark Waugh. It didn't really fit, but yeah, it was. But all
And
those.
how did it go?
It went all right. There was a few of us, so it was a bit more like almost like a bit of a lineup, and that we were in a tent in the backyard, so there was
that'd be all right.
There was some context, but then after we finished, she gave him a brand new Harley for his 50th.
Oh,
was,
yeah.
like,
And then at that point, you think, I should have asked for more money.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
go do those gigs, you go, I should have asked for more money. But I did quite a few gigs for the Jewish community. I did one gig where it absolutely went off, and so they just did parties and stuff, because they love comedy. That was good, actually.
Akmal told me a story about getting wheeled off at a Jewish gig, because the stage was on wheels, and these guys just pushed him out.
Hey, what are you doing? Oh, yeah. Yeah, funny.
Yeah. So so how did the radio and all that sort of stuff start? So you sort of start in TV, writing.
Yeah,
doing
stand up. Always wanted to do radio. Started on community radio. So back then there was no internet, there was no podcasts, and so you're only Melbourne's got a great radio station called 3RRR, and I used to listen to it as a kid because I liked alternative music. Sort of like back in the day. Bands like, The Cure or the Smiths, whatever, and Australian bands like the Sunny Boys and the Models and those bands. And so, because we were writing the music, all the brothers, not mum and dad weren't, but anyway, me and my brothers were. And so, because of that, I listened to these community radio stations, and they always had comedy on. So, Triple R had like Mark Little would do a radio show. Mark Little was Joe Mangles in Neighbours.
Oh, yeah.
Who was like a legendary Melbourne comic in the 80s. And so, we used to go, when I lived in a shared house in the 80s, we used to go see him. And he was like a comic in the 80s, and he was really funny. And so, but he used to do a radio show. And so then I used to ring in when I was doing year 12 from the red phone in the corridor at school and ring in on his talkback show. He used to do a show called What Do You Reckon? And I had a character called, and then he started referencing my character. Oh, maybe, what was I called? I can't remember. I pretended to be like a superhero, but a really shit-house one. Like I'm gonna. What are you doing today? What do you call? Oh, Danger Man. That's what I was, Danger Man. What are you doing today, Danger Man? I said, oh. So obviously I sound like a kid. So I'm gonna go to the bowls club and streak. The Ringwood Bowls Club or whatever. And so it amused him. And so I thought, I'm gonna get a radio one day. And so we just did, me and some other comics that I met on the circuit. We did some demos and gave them to the head guy at the community radio station, and he just gave us a half-hour show, which then built to an hour show. We got a following, and we used to do live shows, and we were all stand up, so it was great fun, and we did characters and stuff. And then from that, I got picked to do the breakfast show, to fill in on the breakfast show. And so the breakfast show on 3RRR, the other alumni are Sam Pang, Tony Wilson, Geraldine Hickey, Kate Langbrook. So I started doing with Kate Langbrook.
Just a bunch of no ones.
Yeah, there's also people that you wouldn't know, but it was definitely a training ground. And so I started doing radio with Kate. Got on really well with her. Then we got, and so these guys, the Crud Boys, you remember them? Tony Moncler and Julian Schiller. They're both still on radio. Tony Moakley does overnights on 3AW on Melbourne and up the eastern coast. And Julian Schiller is Adelaide's ABC announcer in the afternoons. Anyway, so these guys they got recruited from Triple R to do Triple M Drive around Australia.
Wow.
In the 90s, they were. And me and Hughesy used to go on their show. Because I found Dave Hughes very funny. He started after me 5 years, and so I would get him to ring in on our Triple R breakfast show and do a report on the weather. I can't remember, but he was often lying in bed, and that's when people got onto him, going, "This guy's really funny." And so then me and Hughesy started doing stuff on Triple M. Kate did too, and so then we got recruited to do Triple M Saturday morning, and then Nova recruited us, and that's how we got onto Nova from that. Yeah.
Bloody hell. So, just all built from that community radio.
Community radio. Community radio is great. And these days, community radio is, podcasting's a similar thing to what...
Yeah.
Because we used to do sketches. I listen to guys now, say, like the aforementioned Nick Capper and Goldstein, and also the Dum Dum Club guys, Tommy and Carl. 20 years ago, they would have been on community radio, those guys.
Yeah.
And then some of them, like American Rosso, would get picked for Triple J. You know what I mean? They get, they go on to Triple J or Triple M. But, I mean, some didn't. But community radio was good because the audience is very loyal and quite big in Melbourne. They've had and so they would pay to see your show.
Yeah.
They were great.
That's always good byproduct too. Like if you are a stand-up, is that idea that you're building an audience one way that will pay to come and see you do something else.
But when I was on Triple R, I was in my 20s, around 30-ish, no kids or anything, and you'd go and do shows, and you were literally talking to yourself. So you know what I mean? Like people that had grown up in the burbs of the country, they moved to the inner city. You all liked sort of similar music because that's why you were listening to this radio station, and so you all had similar. So you talk about shared housing, you talk about going to uni. You know what I mean? There was no talk about having kids, but now, of course, that's all we talk about.
Yeah, it's all changed.
It's all changed, but that's all right. That's how it goes.
Yeah. So do you reckon? Like I remember I did a brief stint of community radio in Sydney on
FBI. Is it FBI?
No, I did 2SSR, the Sound of the Sutherland Shire.
Oh yeah, the Southern Shire. Yeah. There's a lot of them down here too. Like Plenty Valley Radio and stuff.
Oh,
yeah.
Mate, it was like this was weird. It was like I used to describe it like it was like a body corporate ran a radio station because it was all retired people and it was so much just to get on. Like because I remember when my second son was born, I was doing the show and I couldn't do it because my wife had gone into labour. And so my cousin who lived around the corner, who knew the guy I did it with, and we were all mates, just jumped on air with him. And we got in trouble for having a guy who hadn't paid the $70 to do the broadcasting course. And we're like, come on, this is ridiculous.
Those stations can be they're like run like a Lions club.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Absolutely. I've been on them as a guest and you're like, oh, man. Yeah,
mate. We had we were called the 90s show. We used to do all 90s, so it was great. We did play old 90s music.
Great.
We used to review 90s movies.
Oh, fantastic!
And then it was a lot of fun to do. But we do a quiz, and never got any callers. Except one night, some guy calls up. And he's like, "Yeah, I want to call for the quiz." And I'm like, "Yes." He goes, "Is it? I forget what he said. Is it John Howard?" I'm like, what are you talking about? There's no. We're not. And he's rung the wrong he's listening to a quiz on another radio station and he's rung the wrong radio station. I'm like, wow.
Oh, God.
This is officially the worst quiz.
Yes.
in radio.
They can be soul destroying those shows.
What's your favourite though? Because you've obviously done TV, film, radio, stand up. What's the if you could just pick your career path from here, what's the one thing that pays the bills?
Oh, probably stand up. Just because it's easy for me. So, I don't want to do hard gigs though. You know what I mean? Like I don't want to do those ones where you have to go on at 10:30 at night, following 4 other acts. So, I'd say stand up. Yeah. I mean, if you get to a stage where you're playing to your own audience, that'd be great. But which I do a bit of. I'm doing festival at the moment. I did Adelaide and Perth, and I'm not that big. I do like 100, 150 seater.
Which is good.
It's good.
That's real good.
It's good.
But a festival.
Yeah, and you might get 40 or 50 on a Wednesday night. Then on the weekends you sell out. So that's good. So if you can continue to do that and build on that, but I mean, I don't know how you do. I mean, there's all this stuff about like I remember when I went to Mildura with Brad Oakes and Billy Stiles, two other great comics, and we were doing like a cafe outside on the decking, and we got about. The guy said, "Oh, we got about 80." Looked like 50 to me. You're driven all that way to Mildura and getting paid reasonable money. And then there was a guy in a theatre, Luke Kidgel, who's like a YouTube.
Yeah.
But he sold out 2 nights. And so, you know what I mean? And he's a good guy and he's a good comic, but you're like, maybe I should get on YouTube. But it's kind of like a younger person's thing.
Yeah, it's always that thing where you see, like, it's a bit of a trap. You see the thing that's working for someone else and you start to go, oh, maybe I'll try and do it.
Yes.
Like you've got to find the thing that
works for you.
Which is, I was talking to, I forget who I was talking to. It might have been Mike G the other night, just talking about how because him and I are the same age. We're both 41, and we're just at that age where we're not young enough that we knew how to capitalize on the internet.
Yes.
But we're old enough to know the internet exists. So we
Yes.
kind of should be better
Yeah,
at
see,
it.
I'm
but we're
17 years older than that, so at least I can say, well, I'm too old.
Yeah.
I'm too old for that. But, that's a thing. So there's that whole argument at the moment. Do you put clips up of your stand-up?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so people like Nick Kappa.
Yeah.
He puts up clips every week of him doing stand-up, him doing crowd work. And it's from Americans do it where they just put their crowd... And Luke Kidgel does this. He just puts his crowd work up and then gets this massive following. But admittedly, they're all... I've been to his gigs and stuff. They're all young people.
Yeah.
They're not my audience. So for a while, I put a few clips up and they got good reactions. And you're like, oh, yeah, but it's a bit of an effort. And you go, you got to get someone to film you. Yeah. And then there's that whole thing about doing a special. Specials weren't a thing when I started. They were not a thing for 20 years at least.
Well,
only recently because it's an American thing. And then you get guys like that guy, Shane Gillis, the American guy, who's very funny. I did a gig with him at the Basement Comedy Club. He was doing the Athenaeum and he wanted to do a warm-up gig.
Oh, yeah.
He's a very, very funny. He was the guy who got sacked from Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
Didn't even get on it because he went on a podcast and did an Asian voice and stuff. And
Which
so,
actually we do
we do the Asian voices later.
That's how we finish this podcast. Like, you've got to do an Asian accent, and I guess which country.
Yeah, which country?
Yeah,
my Asian voice is very generic. My kids, you get cancelled, Dad. He and then there was the thing about he just put his special for free on YouTube, and it's had 20 million, and it's made him a star.
That's insane.
So do you film a special and then sell it to Netflix like Reese Nicholson did? He filmed a special and then sold it to Netflix. That's a ballsy move to put up all that money. He filmed it at the Athenaeum, and then he's a very funny guy, Reese, and then he sold it to Netflix. But then again, Reese Nicholson is kind of the moment of the time.
Yes,
he's on. He's a young gay guy. He's on a lot of TV stuff at the moment.
But
Netflix will probably go, oh yeah, that guy, great. Whereas I could film a special and they go to Netflix, they go, oh, you?
We've got 1,000 of you.
You've got 1,000 worldwide guys. But then do you just put it for free on, YouTube?
Yeah, and even then, how does, it's like you hear people talk a little bit more about behind the scenes about how, okay, yeah, you put it on YouTube, but it's not just that. You got to, work out how to get the algorithm to elevate it.
Yes.
So that's what sometimes people have that controversial stuff because it kicks off the arguments in the comments, which then pumps it up. The algorithm pumps it up, and it's just like, I don't want to have to think. Like I kind of got into stand up because I want to be able to just say what I think's funny, not try and reverse engineer a.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah,
thing.
you don't want to do that.
But it's just I feel like we're at the point where it's the whole sort of economy of it all is changing quite quickly.
Well, yeah, because in my day, there was no YouTube, there was no internet. And so what you do TV spots to make you famous or radio, TV and radio. And so that was the traditional path of like Husey, for example. He did gala spots and radio and it made him famous. Nothing on the internet helped him. You know what I mean? But now everyone's got a TV in their pocket. So... And my kids who are adults and teenagers, they're not watching TV, but they're watching YouTube. They're watching Reddit, and So.
Well, even the TV shows now, it seems to be that the ratings, like what actually counts as good ratings, are low now. But all those TV shows now have clips on channels that drive.
Yeah. I did the gala a few years ago, and no one really watches the gala anymore compared to back in the day. You get 1 million people watching, but these days. that's broken over 4 nights or whatever. But your YouTube clip, they put the clip up on YouTube. That gets more views than the actual thing, the actual TV show. So yeah,
which is it's hard to know what gets to work. But I kind of feel like my dream, if you can just do enough of whatever else to keep that audience coming.
Yes, your podcast has been good for me because I do a podcast with Glenn Robbins, aforementioned.
Yeah, which is what explain
related.
That podcast.
Hey,
explain that podcast.
So we get
That's
2
quite good.
topics at the start of the show. So like we recently, the first one we ever did, one of the first ones we ever did was Nazis and Fanta. So people don't know Fanta was created under the Nazi regime because they couldn't get Coca-Cola. So Fanteas, as it was called in Germany, was actually a Nazi creation. So when you're drinking your Fanta, just remember that.
Wow.
Yeah. So so we try and work out what the connection is. We have a guess, and then the computer, like Siri, Siri tells us the answer, and that's it. But it's a whole journey. We just talk about our own lives, and along the way we do sketches and stuff. And
I feel like that's a little like for anyone's starting out finding their way in podcasts. It's almost a little unfair. You've got you and Glenn Robbins, 2 guys.
Yeah, it's true. It's true, especially Glenn. I mean, you walk down the street with Glenn. I mean, we went to the supermarket the other day where he lives in Bayside, Melbourne, and man, it's like going out with the Pope. You know what I mean? Like people lose their shit when they say, "Oh my god," because he's been on the TV since the 80s.
Yeah.
And they look at me and they go, "Oh yeah, that guy looks familiar too." But that's Glenn Robbins. Oh my god, like
with Katie Lang. What's
with
going
Katie
on?
Lang, exactly. That's what happens. So yeah. So we do. I do that, and I do another one with Kitty Flanagan, which is about junk food because she is a massive snack food. You wouldn't think about looking at her because she's very petite, but she loves lollies and chips. She doesn't like hamburgers and stuff like that, whereas I love all that stuff. Absolutely. We only came across it. We were doing a gig in the country, and we stopped at a servo, and she started talking about I mean, I've got a big knowledge of lollies, but she's got a bigger knowledge than me, which is it's one of my areas of expertise. You know what I mean? So I'll do that one.
So you were sweet. If you could only have one for the rest of your life, sweet or savoury, what are you going?
I'd probably say savoury because my taste has matured over the years. I just know when I walk into the 7-Eleven, because that's the thing about me. That's why I'm fat. I'll do a gig. Like last night I did 3 gigs in the comedy festival, like 2 sort of best of, and then I had to do my solo show. And then I had like 40 minutes to kill. And so I walked into the 7-Eleven and I bought a packet of Twisties. See, that's often my a savoury snack. Absolutely.
That's what I'm. I got to say, if I could only choose, I'm a savoury guy.
Yeah, I used to be sweet, really sweet, but I just reckon my tastes have changed over the years. Yeah.
See, I reckon I've got more sweet as time goes on, but that's related to. I find I switch from savoury to sweet when I turn to whiskey.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah. I have beer. I had a beer last night, and I don't drink a lot, hardly at all. But when I have a beer, I often want potato chips.
Yeah, I'm the same. So beer, it's all savoury.
Savoury.
And then when I get to the whiskey, I'm like, you know what, a bit of licorice or a nice bit of
I love licorice.
dark chocolate or something.
Yeah.
So even then, I'm not like sickly sweet sort of a thing. There's
lollies here.
Yeah.
Yeah, see, that's not a bad. That's favourites, isn't it? That'd be favourites. We
favourites.
reviewed the favourites. Crunchies are very good.
Yeah, crunchy.
Cherry ripe.
Crunchy goes well with the whiskey.
Yeah, Skittles. See, my kids like them. I'm not into them. No
well,
way.
you can take. I've got a whole nother bag. You can take them home with you. How old are your kids now?
16, 14, and 19.
16.
The one's at uni and 2 are at school.
16. So are you past school drop-offs?
No, they still drive them. It's really annoying. And they go to a public school. I'm like, they get in the car. I'm like, fuck, it's like you guys are going to Melbourne Grammar. Like, why am I dropping you off? It started during the pandemic with the older boy doing year 11, year 12, and then just continued on. And like, I get up every day about 7:20 and make their lunches. And my wife wanders out of bed. She never seems. It's just assumed that I will drive them. You know what I mean? It's just assumed. It's not a long drive, but yeah, it's high school's different from primary school. But even the uni one, occasionally you have to drive him to the bus stop because he's running late. I'm like, oh fuck you. You know, when you're a comic, you're home. So I'm like, and my wife, she doesn't work outside the house. And so we're like a retired couple just bouncing around the house. And then you just get given jobs. Like,
that's my worst day. Like, not worst days, but when my wife goes, I'm working from home tomorrow. I'm like, oh, fuck, she's going to see how little I have on.
Yes. Yep, there's all of that. But anyway, no. No, but they all came to the show the other night because they haven't seen me do comedy a lot, my kids. My wife's kept them away. But the 16-year-old girl brought all her friends.
Oh wow!
And because they go in inner city high school, they're very PC. Like, it's hilarious. They've got dyed hair, and and I said to them, that's my worst audience. Is like, young teenagers. I said, just tell them it's like their dad doing stand up, because I hear them talking about their dads, and all the dads. They all seem similar to me. So I'm just like, just tell them, and they were great though. They got into it. I told the audience all my kids are here.
Would that for me that'd be? I don't like when there's a bunch of people I know there.
No. My wife hasn't been. No, because I talk about them too. So I was stopping routines midway.
Oh really?
Oh yeah, and changing things. Yeah, I really get stuck into my oldest son because he's at uni, and he's the one who says I'm going to get cancelled all the time, and he just talks, and he gets on Reddit all the time. So I do a whole routine about he's on Reddit and that kind of stuff. So I still did the routine. He said it was fine. So but he likes friendly Geordies. You know what I mean? So So I got tickets to see him. So me and him went along, and he was great. So he's I understand that they're not going to necessarily like me, but it's good that they like comedy and friendly Geordies. Interesting, two of my kids are really interested in politics, and he's great because at least he gets 500 kids, essentially young people, in a room and talks about politics. He love him or hate him, that's what he does, and I reckon that's good.
He used to. I remember years ago when they at the Chippo in in Sydney, they used to run like a workshop. So you'd run the show, but before the show, you'd come down and just do your material for other comics. Yeah. And he used to come down and do that like right at the start, and it was all out there weird stuff.
Yeah,
like
he would have been young
accent.
too.
Oh, he was real young.
But see, that's the good thing about the internet. He's found his audience.
Yeah,
and what I mean, God, people have tried to burn his house down.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he's found his
full
audience.
on.
Yeah,
pretty full on.
Ended up in court. He's had a career.
Yeah.
Mate, that's going to have to do us for time. Thank you so much for doing this.
No problem.
Before we go, where can people find you on that the aforementioned internet?
Oh, yeah. Just podcasts is generally where you find me. I mean, I've got clips online, but they're on Facebook and Twitter. But, have a listen to Somehow Related with Glenn Robbins. Or The Junkies with Kitty Flanagan. If you like snack food, if you don't like snack food, don't listen. I mean, I meet skinny people and go, I don't really get that podcast. Well, don't listen. You know what I mean? There's a million podcasts out there. If you like soccer, listen to a soccer podcast.
Yeah, if you like intermittent fasting, listen to an intermittent fasting podcast.
There's something for everyone. But the one with Glenn Robbins is more generic. So, yeah.
Oh,
and,
nice.
and if you're a middle-aged person, you'll love it because it's all the references. You'll hear all the references. Because most of the people that I meet that are fans of the show are middle-aged people, and often with their teenagers. So it's not rude. So it's a good one.
Oh, beautiful.
To listen with the kids, not kids, but teenagers.
And are you doing Sydney, Brisbane, any of the other festivals?
No, I'm not. I did Perth and Adelaide, but I've never done Sydney Festival. And Brisbane I've done in the past, but I haven't lined anything up. So.
And it's Dave ONeil online?
On Twitter, yeah.
On Twitter.
I think, yeah. Again, I'm not that. I'm on Twitter a bit, but I just tend to get in arguments with anti-vaxxers. So, and then my son shows my wife and she gets very angry, so I stop it. But
you've got a narc in the house.
Yeah, it's terrible. Anyway.
All right, mate. Thanks very much for doing this.
No worries. Thanks.